Song, and today I will be reading to you from Stars and Moonflowers in Our Garden by RainbowStar_772. That's me. Anyway, on to Chapter 1, Gentle Hands and Flowers. Russia sighed as he watched the person who tended to the garden below his window. Honestly, Russia knew nothing of him other than how he looked. He wore something akin to a cape. It buttoned up on one side and covered up the shoulders of the outfit. It had a symbol on it. He believed it was one of the medicine symbols, so he wasn't sure why he had the patch. He'd never done anything with medicine, as far as he knew. He had a formal-looking long sleeve on, and some black gloves. His pants went a little past his knees and flared out. His hair looked fluffy, but it hid his ears. He couldn't help but want to see how it felt. He'd never seen his eyes, but he was sure they were purple from what he'd heard from people speaking around the castle. He'd never seen the other tending to the garden during the day, though he'd seen him walking with a girl a few times. The other did not seem happy in her presence. In fact, he often seemed annoyed when she reached to try and hold his hand. He'd heard the other called America, though he wasn't sure that was his name, as America was a very feisty doctor of theirs, who was known for his no-nonsense attitude. That didn't quite fit the person he watched gently tend to the flowers and gently collect herbs. That was neither here nor there, as the person was gently tending to the chamomile flower bed below his window. Then he saw the person that the other seemed to dread coming up behind him. He felt bad that he couldn't really warn him without waking his sister, who was asleep in the other room. So he stayed quiet, very reluctantly. She snuck up behind him and grabbed his hand, pulling him up with a wide smile on her face. The other flinched and tried to pull his hand away from her, obviously not liking the contact she was trying to initiate. She frowned and said something that seemed to throw the gardener off and stun him. Then he pulled his hand away again, which further upset her. She then grabbed his hand more forcefully and grabbed his face. Then she kissed him. He was more distraught and forced himself to stay away from her, elbowing her in the stomach in the process. It left the girl stunned enough to give the gardener time enough to get away. He left to tend to a different area. Russia wished he could have stayed, but definitely understood the want to get away from this girl. He didn't know where the gardener had gone, but it was probably better if he went to bed instead of dwelling on it. He'd see the gardener the next day, even if he never talked to him. Maybe he could write him letters. Honestly, being royalty sucked a little because of how people were less honest with you. Bonds tended to be less genuine because of it. So, talking to the gardener in person was out of the question. But maybe writing him letters would be fine. It'd keep his identity sealed, and it'd allow for more open conversations. He had to figure out what he wanted to be referred to as, because his name wasn't an option. Maybe he could just go by R. It wouldn't give away his name, but it would definitely be suspicious. He didn't care if the other knew that he didn't want to share his name, but he did care to make it easier for him. An actual name would help with that. Maybe Neeks would work, as he did only see the gardener at night. The night always made him think of the gardener, so it'd work. It was a pretty name that meant night, so he'd do good to use it. He would explain it in the letter. He owed the gardener that much. He still felt bad for not warning him the night before, but he'd keep it out of the letter, because it may give away his identity. He'd start writing tonight. Honestly, he couldn't wait for the morning. He never woke up early enough for him to not be woken by his father. It was probably because of him staying up to see the gardener. The first time he'd seen the gardener was about a year ago. He was unable to sleep. He was restless. Then he saw the gardener, bathed in the light of the full moon. He was captivating, and the way he checked the flowers beneath his window was gentle. Seeing him put his mind to rest. Only did he see him a second time 2 months prior, as he had another restless night. He was again bathed in the moonlight. Though the moon was not full that night, it was waxing and would be full the next night. He saw him walk to the flowers and treat them with such gentle aid. He made sure none were too overgrown and none had broken stems. This time he watched a little longer, then headed to bed. He couldn't help himself and had stayed up later at night to watch the gardener be so gentle with the flowers the next night. Then he kept doing it. It was relaxing and nice to see someone be so gentle. Maybe he should stop, but honestly, the gentle disposition was nice. So he'd rather not stop staying up to see him, especially since it didn't cause him to miss much or take him off a proper sleep schedule. There really wasn't much of a reason for him to stop, especially considering the lack of effect it had on his day-to-day life. If anything, it had a positive effect. His sleep had been more restful in the past 2 months. He was pretty sure his siblings had noticed, though none had asked. Of course, his father had asked, but had accepted him mentioning how pretty and calming the night was. He wasn't sure why he hadn't said the full reason, but felt it a bit embarrassing and exposing of himself to answer it with all of it. So he kept him watching the gardener to himself. And that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. Anyway, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. That being said, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Just enjoy your time, and I will see you tomorrow.